book is called. And the book is called The Book of the Bizarre. Something wicked. Let me get just a little light. Okay. The magical skull of doom. Very few objects have engendered as much controversy or imaginative conjecture as the magical skull of doom. A crystal skull life-size in its circumference and likeness to the human head, shrouded in mysteries with unknown origins. There are countless tales of strange phenomena associated with it. Some believe it is haunted, others believe it is cursed, and still others believe it is of extraterrestrial origin. As legend has it, the skull first turned up in the 1920s under an altar in the archaeological dig of the ruins of, this is a Mayan word, hi Susie, of Lubantan, the great Mayan city, in what is now known as Belize. Some of the greatest arguments occur over whether or not the magical skull of doom is pre-Columbian. While other crystal skulls have been discovered in Central American ruins, none can match the skull of doom for its perfection of craftsmanship and likeness to a real skull. Perhaps the biggest mystery of all is that the crystal from which the skull was carved appears to be derived only from California, not the Mayan territory. Frederick Mitchell Hedges, one of the archaeologists who was present at the discovery, is rumored to have planted it on the occasion of his adopted daughter Anne's birthday, the day of the skull's discovery. It has also been suggested that the skull was never in Lubantun. Nevertheless, Hedges proclaimed that the skull was used by the high priest of the Maya to concentrate on and will death, that it was the embodiment of all evil, or that people who scoffed at the skull have died or have been stricken and become seriously ill. Hedges also attributed to the large hunk of crystal the manoiker of the skull of doom, and greatly aided in the swirl of rumors, mist, and myth that has continued to enshroud it. Frank Dortland, a highly reputable art restorer and one of the later owners of the skull, kept and studied the magical skull of doom. Dortland swore that the skull gave off an elusive perfume, that it seemed to emanate a sound familiar to the bells chiming. That's interesting. And that it could change, this gets bizarre, it's almost over. Okay, that it could change color at will. He also claimed that it sometimes was filled with ever-changing cloudy images, and at other times it contained crystal clear images of temples, mountains, and a myriad of other striking scenes. Other folks who observed the skull when it was under Dortland's watch said a hazy aura would occasionally intrude it. Still stranger are the reports of psychological phenomena such as quickening of the pulse, muscle spasms in the legs and arms, and even eye twitching affecting people who were near the skull. Maybe people are fascinated with the magical skull of doom because it is simple in its inherent magnificence. It looks like it was formed whole, and it bears nearly no sign of tool marks. The artist who created this skull was a master of the highest order. The handiwork is nothing short of spectacular. Just polishing the skull would have been a labor of some years. The proverbial king on the cake is especially fascinating. The skull is crafted in such a way that light collects and refracts in the eye sockets, causing them to emit an eerie glow. Atop it already showing different, that's bizarre. Okay, the Transylvanian tablets. In 1961, archaeologists digging into a prehistoric mound in the Transylvanian village of oh, go figure, Tartaria, made a startling discovery: several small clay tablets with bizarre inscriptions on them. Some believed the inscriptions to be sigils of magical signs, and others believed that they were important documents left behind for the singular purpose of being found, time capsules perhaps. Using the modern method of carbon dating, the object's origin was placed at around 4000 BC. The writing was believed to be of Mesopotamian origin, specifically Sumerian, the first written language. Could this discovery mean the origins of writing began in the wild backwoods of Transylvania? Well, the 3 tablets were found in the lowest layer of the dig. They were in a sacrificial pit within a burial mound, and the pit also contained some scattered human bones. The bones bore symbols quite similar to the inscriptions on the tablets. The symbols were from both Sumer and from the highly advanced Minoan civilizations of Crete. But if the carbon dating is accurate, the tablets were made by a primitive Stone Age agriculture tribe known as the Vinca. The Vinca predated Sumerian writings by 1 millennium and the Minoan writings by 2,000 years. Most scholars believe that the inscriptions were magical ciphers, spells, and secret codes of this ancient farming tribe. The hash marks, nice words, swirls, X's, and shapes on 3 tablets cast a spell over mystery lovers too. Stonehenge. I feel like we could almost skip it, but built over 4,000 years ago. Stonehenge, because there's finding so many of them. The massive stone monument that sits on the Salisbury plain of England is shrouded in mystery and legend. Was it constructed as an ancient calendar and used to predict astrological events or seasonal changes? Or was it a place of worship, a spiritual temple built to honor the deities of its maker? The purpose of this spectacular man-made rock formation has been studied and debated for centuries. Just as bewildering as the questions of how Stone Age was created, some of the stones used are believed to have come from hundreds of miles away. How are those rocks, some weighing up to 4 tons, transported such a distance in an era before the invention of the wheel? And no one does know for sure. And no one knows for sure who built Stonehenge. Well, I thought we disagreed on that. There are many supernatural and mythical theories, though none have ever been proven. Some believe Stone Age was the... I can't do it. Stonehenge. Stone, get high. Was the creation of aliens, while others claim that the sorcerer Merlin used... I've never heard this, by the way. Uses magical powers to move the stones across the land and sea. One legend even tells of the devil creating Stonehenge as part of a bizarre riddle he concocted to toy with local villagers. Like, great. All right. Stone's Public House. Numerous stories of ghostly encounters surround Stone's Public House in Ashland, Massachusetts. The inn and pub was built in 1834 by John Stone and still serves as a restaurant and pub today. The assistant manager of Stone's tells a tale of long alone in the pub. Of being alone in the pub one night, finishing up the day's duties, I believe, and having a sudden feeling of terror. Then a handful of birdseed fell through holes in the ceiling. That's random. Or is it? Rattling to his newly mopped floor. Other staffers report water faucets turning on by themselves, and numerous patrons say they have felt someone tapping on their shoulder only to find no one behind them when they turn around. A noted hypnotist and parapsychologist, Ralph Bibbs, visited the inn numerous times and says that there are at least 6, possibly 7, different ghosts that dwell there. Bilbo Baggins says that Stone himself accidentally killed a boarder in 1845 and tried to cover up the murder. The other spirits were accomplices or witnesses to Stone's crime, having sworn to keep Stone's crime a secret. While they were alive, they were still bound to the pub in death. That would suck. The Tower of London is perhaps the most infamous haunted dwelling in history. See, I wasn't even aware of this. Built over a 200-year period, beginning in the early 11th century, the complex is seen as an architectural wonder. I didn't know this. Having over 20 towers and occupying over 18 acres of land. I did not know that at all. The Tower of London was used by English monarchs as a prison, and it has housed some of Britain's most notorious of criminals, murderers and traitors to the, I thought they were going to say to the nines, to the crown were locked up in one of its many towers. I did not know about these towers. To await execution, and those prisoners who were sentenced to death were beheaded within the tower's very walls. Many of those who were beheaded are said to haunt the tower to this day. Lady Jane Grey, who held the throne for only 9 days, going from zero to hero or vice versa, in 1554 before being executed in the tower, is said to appear every year on the day of her death, holding her own head beneath her arm. 2 other murdered queens, go figure they're females, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, both wives of Henry 678, I am Henry VIII, also are said to appear within the tower as 2 headless figures surrounded by a supernatural glow. Catherine has even been seen and heard wandering the halls and begging for mercy as she did on the day of her execution. One of the tower's most gruesome murders was of the Countess of Salisbury, as her head was placed on the executioner's block. She panicked, tried to run. Oh, Lord. The executioner chased her down and hacked her to death with his axe. It is said that the spirits of the Countess and her executioner appear and react to her brutal murder. Of all the ghostly sightings in the Tower of London, I did not know about this tower. The most disturbing are the apparitions of 2 small boys walking along the hallway hand in hand. These boys are believed to be the sons and heirs of King Edward V. Edward's brother Richard, Duke of Gloucester, placed his nephews in the tower after King Edward's death. He later smothered the 2 princes in their sleep so that he could claim the king's throne for himself. That's about some greed, baloney. A ghost to be. What manner of death creates a ghost? While many ghosts may stay on after their passing because they are fond of a place or person, most hauntings are attributed to some kind of disruptive death. Leslie Rule describes these as ghost makers in her book, Coast to Coast Ghosts. Murder, unsolved killings especially. Ghost often moves on once the murder is solved. Suicide, torment equals a soul bound to earth. Accidents, sudden deaths have more hauntings attached to them than the deaths of natural causes. Broken hearts, those who die of mourning are often the source of ghostly activity. Greed, a preoccupation with land or money in life, can be carried into the beyond. Lack of proper burial or desecration, like messing it up, of a gravesite. Okay, King Tavern, Natchez, Mississippi. The story of the ghosting at King's Tavern in, I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, Natchez, Mississippi, dates back to the late 700s, when a woman named Madeline, the mistress of Richard King, was murdered by King's jealous wife. For more than 200 years, the tavern's patrons have reported hauntings, including the ghost of a woman standing in front of them, angrily poised with hands on her hips. In the 1930s, the skeleton of a woman was discovered, sealed in a brick fireplace, a dagger in her chest. Imagine, like, back then, I guess you could have done whatever you wanted to. All right, Silas of Kennenbuck. The Kennenbuck Inn in Kennenbuckport, Maine, is reputed to be haunted by a friendly ghost named Silas. Among Silas's tricks are levitating glass and throwing beer mugs. Gotcha. Rebecca Dorrington's Fatal Fall. And this does have a bunch of different chapters, like not just ghost shit. In the High Sierra of California, among the pines and fresh mountain air, the little town of Dorrington is home to the Dorrington Hotel. The town is named after Rebecca Dorrington, who died in a fatal fall down a flight of stairs in the hotel in 1870. Today's hotel guests report banging doors, flashing lights, and furniture shifting. Some have even claimed to witness a phantom recreation of Rebecca's fatal fall. Haunted, a checklist. Here are 6 telltale signs that your house may be haunted, especially if any signs occur repeatedly. Pets react with seemingly out of place growls, barks, or hisses to things no one else can see. Household members have repeated nightmares. Objects disappear often to... I didn't do that. I shut it somewhere else after some time. For example, a young woman living in an old railroad flat in Santa Fe has come home to find her ghost had moved or turned over her sugar bowl on numerous occasions. Electrical appliances turn on and off by themselves. Faucets or toilets run or flush themselves. The building has inexplicable cold drafts or cold spots. Inhabitants hear footsteps, taps on walls or windows, and voices that cannot be attributed to other living people or sources in the house. New England Ghost, as told by Raymond Buckland. I first came to the United States in 1962. I lived on Long Island, New York. About 10 years later, moved up to live on the shores of Lake Winnipesaukee, New Hampshire. My wife and I purchased a home there at Weirs Beach. The house was built circa 1825. It was a beautiful two-story with an attached L barn, stable, and the buildings, building set on a couple of acres. Right from the start, we felt very comfortable and very welcomed in the house. It had a large living room with a wonderful beamed ceiling. The room ran the length of the house and on the west side. A staircase went up the center of the house. The front door was at its base, and there were 4 bedrooms above. On the east side of the house was the kitchen and my study. My study had 2 windows looking out to the front and one looking to the side. A later addition was a screened-in porch that ran across the full front of the house. The door at the east end of this porch opened onto a paved path leading to the garage and the driveway. We quickly came to realize that the house was haunted. While we sat downstairs in the living room, we frequently heard footsteps walking about in the bed rooms. I particularly remember one time when the footsteps walked across the room, across the room above my elder son's front bedroom, and then started down the stairs. My wife and I were sitting in the living room, and we were both turned to see who had come down, since neither of my sons was home. We expected the person to come around the corner from the foot of the stair into the living room, but no one came. The footsteps had stopped at the bottom of the stairs. I got up out of my chair and went to look. There was no one there. The staircase was empty. On another occasion, my wife's grandmother was staying with us, sleeping in my elder son's bedroom. One morning, she came down to breakfast and reported a nighttime visitor. She said she had awakened in the middle of the night to find a woman standing at the foot of her bed. There was a nightlight in the room, and she could see that the woman was wearing a long blue dress. The figure studied her for a few minutes and then turned and simply disappeared, fading away into nothing. I saw a figure myself once. I was in my study when I heard the screen door bang and looked up to glimpse a man crossing the porch to go to the front door. As I got up from my desk, I expected to hear the front door bell ring, but it didn't. I went and opened the door and looked out. There was no one there. The porch was empty. There was no one outside or anywhere in the driveway. The screen door invariably squeaked open when opened, but I didn't hear it squeak on this occasion. We lived in the house for almost 5 years and became accustomed to our ghosts. They were in no way not nice. We were sorry to say goodbye to them when we eventually sold the house. I bet everybody wished their situation was like that. Not all haunts are old. Brad Stiegler's Real Ghost, Restless Spirits, and Haunted Places is chock full of fantastically frightening true tales of terror. Among them is the story of a woman and her husband who moved into a house in 1992. When the house was just 11 years old, not long after moving in, the woman began to hear someone walking in her upstairs hallway. Convinced it was her son sneaking out, she would go upstairs to check on him and find him sleeping soundly in bed. At first, she did not speak of the footsteps, not even to her husband and son. Then the footsteps increased in frequency and changed location. including coming into her bedroom. It didn't take her long to learn from her husband that he too was hearing many strange noises, particularly when he was home alone during the brightness of day. In the first month living there, she told author Steiger that they went through at least 100 light bulbs. Lights were constantly blowing out all throughout the house. Yeah, that'd be a bit much for me. The woman said the noises had begun just after the family had moved in, and when she'd hung an old lead mirror left behind by the previous owners in the hallway opposite her son's room. Only when she got rid of the mirror did the noises stop. Something about the lead, I guess. Animal apparitions. Not only do animals sense ghosts, but animals can be ghosts. Oh boy. For example, actor Rudolph Valentino's Great Dane Kabar is reported to haunt his former owner's gravesite in Port it looks like the Tocobaga people, but it's not. Tabocco, Maryland, there is a blood-stained rock known to locals as Peddler's Rock. It is said to be home to the blue dog who guards his dead master's buried treasure. In Casper, Wyoming, ranchers have long reported the image of a white steed galloping across the area known as Rattlesnake Range. I feel like Jeffree Star lives close to there. This horse was known as White Devil when he was alive due to his reputation for fiercely defending himself and other horses against the mighty lasso. In Reading, Pennsylvania, the ghost of Mrs. Bissinger and her children still roam an area near the Union Lock Canal where she drowned herself and her children. In 1875, visitors to this area often report being overwhelmed by a sad and horrific energy. A fond farewell. Dana was the youngest of 4 kids, living in an old Victorian house in the Minnesota suburbs. Her grandfather, who lived in the same town as she did, was sick in the hospital. But Dana was too young to really know what was going on or that he was dying. One day, while her mother was at the hospital, Dana came walking down the grand staircase in her house. To her surprise, she saw her grandfather walking up toward her. Looking healthy and happy, "I wanted to say goodbye, Dana, and I love you very much," he said, and continued up the stairs. Delighted, the child raced into the kitchen to tell her mother that Grandpa was all better and that he'd come home for a visit. But her mother had just returned from the hospital with some bad news. Her grandfather had passed away earlier that afternoon. Then it asks, have you seen a ghost? If it is possible that you have and just didn't know what to look for. If the figure you saw was unusually pale, disappeared after an incident, ignored you when you spoke or called out, appeared in an odd place, or was dressed inappropriately, often of another era, perhaps you have seen a ghost. Of course, many of these characteristics could describe some of your relatives as well. It's kind of funny. The Haunted Boathouse, as told by Chris Ward. In late October 2004, and as part of a unique archaeological project along the Drakes Bay Bluff on the Point Reyes National Seashore in Northern California, our 5-person team was given accommodation at the restored Drakes Bay Life-Saving Station, otherwise known as the Boathouse. The Boathouse, a National Historic Landmark, is an impressive building overlooking the waters of Drakes Bay. As the park official led us on our initial tour of the building, I could not help but notice a creepy feeling when we were brought into the boat room. The boat room houses a now decommissioned lifeboat, the first motorized lifeboat north of San Francisco Bay. The lifeboat had been used in countless rescue missions from 1953 to 1965, covering the extent of the Northern California coastline from Drakes Bay north to Humboldt Bay. I love that area, some of my favorite spots. I had to wonder why such a unique historic relic was shut away in this room. It was resting half on the ground, half off, teetering on an old wooden sawhorse. When I inquired, the park official responded with this story. On a stormy Thanksgiving Eve in 1960, the Coast Guard team at Drakes Bay was alerted to a cry for help from a fishing boat that appeared to be in distress north of Fort Bragg. A well-trained and competent crew, they quickly responded. A 2-person crew launched the lifeboat into the dark night, no easy task, and headed north to Fort Bragg through blinding rain and turbulent seas. The experienced seamen made their way to the rocky and treacherous coast and successfully towed the fishing boat to shore just outside of Fort Bragg. They then reportedly headed south to Drake's Bay. The crew members never returned to the boathouse. The following morning, a search party headed to the boathouse only to discover a horrific sight. The lifeboat had run aground not more than 150 yards from its berth at the boathouse. The engine and propeller were still churning, yet neither member of the crew was in sight. Although the lifeboat had traveled hundreds of miles in the most adverse of conditions and had returned to the very bay from whence it had launched, there was no sign of either seaman. That's weird. Their bodies were never found. Shortly thereafter, the boathouse was decommissioned and the lifeboat locked away. For some 20 years, the lifeboat sat in its home, of course, until the National Park Service, they're into something, created the Point Reyes National Seashore. I'll be damned. And the historic boathouse and lifeboat therein became part of a lengthy restoration process. The Park Service restored the lifeboat to its former glory. Oh, smart. Intending to take it back out into the bay for special occasions. I don't know if this is a good idea. At last, the day came for the boat to be launched again into the salty waters. Reporters and park supporters gathered round to view the lifeboat, which was supported on a carriage of two wooden sawhorses. Just at the moment of rechristening, the lifeboat lurched forward and crashed down, smashing one of the sawhorses and damaging the keel of the boat extensively. The boat would not again touch the waters of Drake's Bay, and it remains exactly where it fell, half on and half off the ground. For 4 nights in late October, after long days of archaeological work, our 5-person crew returned to the boathouse for a night's sleep. Yet these nights were anything but restful. Each member of our crew reported strange happenings and unexplained sounds. Mysterious footsteps creaked down the corridor outside the captain's room. When all members of our team were accounted for, things slammed to the floor in the boat room, things that had been fastened tightly to the wall the night before. One of our crew members repeatedly said that there was somebody looking through the shelves in the kitchen where she saw shadows. This sight was enough to scare her from her luxurious room downstairs to the bunks upstairs where the rest of us lodged. A lunar eclipse that shortened days and long nights of late October, a brewing storm, a boathouse that rests 3/4 of the way over the murky waters of the bay. Even a team of rational scientists could not help but feel that there was something decidedly haunted about the boathouse. It is an odd thing, but everyone who disappears is said to be seen in San Francisco. It must be a delightful city and possess all the attractions of the next world. Oscar Wilde. Bizarre happenings in Portland. A friend of mine had purchased a house in Portland, Oregon, and was just completing a rather extensive renovation. One of the men who was working on the house was also staying there, despite the raw conditions. Throughout the period of time he was living there, he had numerous strange experiences. Doors slammed and then creaked open, and he had a constant feeling of being watched. The wires that had been rigged into light sockets and outlets were ripped clean over and over. Painters reported open cans of paint had been turned upside down without a drop spilled, only for paint to go all over the floor when they attempted to move the can. My friend, the owner, had purchased a set of spiral stairs from an auction. The metal stairs had once been in the local, well, there you go, local jailhouse and were used by prisoners. Later, the man living in the house said that nothing happened until after they had installed those stairs. When the renovation was nearly complete, I was hired to clean up and put the finishing touches on the place. One evening, I was at the house working late. The owner was upstairs asleep. I was in the basement with my headphones on. It was pretty late, at least 10 or 11. I had repeatedly felt something like a crawling sensation in my hair, but attributed it to spiders or dust, as the house was still in a bit of disarray. Then I felt and saw something that I knew was no spider. I was working in front of the bank of windows, cleaning them and scraping away the paint that had gotten onto the glass, as it was light inside but dark outside. The windows were a bit like a mirror. I felt something like a tug on a piece of my hair, and I looked at my reflection in the window. I actually saw a piece of my hair move up and away from my head, as if someone were standing behind me and pulling at it. I was dumbstruck and actually froze with shock. I stood there for what felt like several minutes, but was probably just a few seconds, and then promptly bolted upstairs and woke up the owner. I have lived in a few haunted places, but watching my hair move on its own accord was decidedly unnerving. The owner and I did some historical research on the place and discovered that two people had died there in the past. One was a little old lady who died of natural causes. The other was a local sheriff who shot and killed himself in the house. We all came to suspect he was our ghost, especially because the stares from the county jail, seemed to trigger the start of all the spooky and strange activity. Then, away out in the woods, I heard what kind of a sound that a ghost makes when it wants to tell about something that's on its mind and can't make itself understood, and so can't rest easy in its grave and has to go about that way every night grieving. Mark Twain. He's an interesting character, Calaveras County. The Flying Dutchman. I'm not sure why this seems familiar, but a 17th century Dutch merchant vessel. The Flying Dutchman and her phantoms are legendary. The ship ran into trouble around the dangerous Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. Accounts of what exactly happened vary. Some say Captain Hendrik van der Decken refused to seek shelter in the harbor. Others say it was impossible to do so because of the weather. Regardless, the Flying Dutchman sank. It had hardly disappeared. Since the 1800s, there have been sightings of the phantom ship that will sometimes pull alongside other ships, but the ghost ship is most often seen from the lighthouse point. Among the witnesses over the years were England's King George V and several famous authors. The Ghost of Nevada City, California, a little haunted hotel on the corner. In the historic town of Nevada City, high in the Sierra foothills on the corner of Broad and Pine Streets, literally you can go there, there's a small hotel with a big history. Owner Katie Bennett, who bought the U.S. hotel in 2002, has heard strange noises and mysterious sounds regularly, and so have her patrons. The odd occurrences include knocking noises, steps that sound like someone is right outside your door, and lights that flicker on and off. The most common thing Bennett hears is laughter, accompanied by music and footsteps as if someone is dancing. So it was no surprise to her when a team of paranormal investigators caught the sound of laughter and footsteps on tape. The recordings included a man calling out for someone named Olga. The sound of boots on hardwood floors and popping and knocking noises. That's wild. Visit www.norcalghosthunters.com. Click on EVP's electronic voice phenomenon. EVPs, I'll be damned. And links, and then scroll down to U.S. Hotel and B&B EVP link to hear the evidence for yourself. That's wild. A ghostly image. In January of 2007, the Union, the local paper for Nevada County, California, reported that a ghostly face had appeared in a photograph. The photo had been taken on the historic Skidmore house, one of a dozen or so original homes still standing in North Bloomfield, a mining town. Of course, it's a park that is now part of the Malakoff-Diggins State Historic Park. Sonny Lopez, there's definitely something up with the parks. I'm just saying. Sonny Lopez, the park's maintenance mechanic, had moved to the park in July of 2006. He and his wife wanted window treatments that had an old-time feel. And so one afternoon, Lopez... photographs of Skidmore House and its window. Wait, no. Okay, he took several photographs of the Skidmore House and its windows. Later, when he went home to show the photos to his wife, he noticed that the otherwise empty home was perhaps not so empty. In one of the photos was a figure that looked like a woman with long hair, pulling back the curtain and looking back out at him. You can view the photograph yourself in the Union's online archives at theunion.com. Do a search for ghostly photography and see what happens. Who knew? The Ghost in the Flame. Originally built as a firehouse, a necessary building in a gold rush town of shacks and temporary structures, the Firehouse Number 2 in Nevada City, California, is now a historical museum. Visitors and employees alike have reported hearing footsteps in an otherwise empty room, as well as feeling sudden temperature changes, cold spots, and a general thickening of the atmosphere. Some witnesses claim to have seen the ghost of a Victorian woman who searches through cabinets and a female piano player from a nearby whorehouse. A few visitors have even cited a group of Chinese men standing around a shrine, a testimony to the Chinese population that contributed to Nevada City's early growth. A Paralyzing Night is told by Giovanni Galati. In the mid-1980s, in Hanover, Germany, my family owned a large apartment house where my parents, brothers, and I, and other employees of the restaurant my father owned would rent rooms. Many of the residents reported ghostly sightings and encounters. Some employees refused to stay. But I was the skeptic until one night I arrived home late after work, close to 1 in the morning, and fell fast asleep. A few hours later, probably around 4 or 5, I woke up suddenly, my eyes wide open. At this moment, I heard the key turn in the lock to my front door. Instinctively, I tried to get up to see who it could be. I lived alone, and I thought I had the only key to the apartment. But I was completely paralyzed. I could not move, not my fingers, my toes, nor even head to see who could be there. As I lay there, struggling with the inability to move, I heard footsteps go through the hall and into the kitchen, echoing across the wooden floors. I then heard the handle of my bedroom door begin to turn. I could hear someone or something come in the door and stand next to my bed. Hello, looming over me. Yet I could not turn my head to see who or what it was there. At this point, tears were streaming down my face, not as much from being frightened as much from being completely frustrated at my inability to so much as wiggle my fingers. I can understand that. I tried everything I could, using reason to try and send the signals to my brain to move my body. After a bit of time, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, though I can't say for sure, I felt the presence withdraw. I heard footsteps move away from my bed toward the door. The sound of the door handle turn, the door open and close, and then the echo of the footsteps retreat back through the kitchen, down the hall, out the front door of my apartment. Psh. As soon as the front door closed, I was able to move. I jumped up, grabbed the key, and ran out of the bedroom. I could still hear the footsteps descending the inner stairwell. As I lunged toward the apartment door, I heard the outside door of the building slam shut, and I ran down the stairs and out the main door. I couldn't see anyone, so I ran down the path and looked right and left down the street. There was no one in sight. A fresh snow had fallen while I was asleep. Yeah, the snow will do it. And I could see no mark or footprint of where anyone had been on the path or the porch. The Palace of Versailles. Just outside of Paris, France, among the rambling and vast grounds of the Palace of Versailles, I don't know what that is, stands La Petite Trianon. Trianon, best known for being the residence of Marie Antoinette La Petite. Trianon was given her name by King Louis X, 16th, in 1774. Yet this mini palace within a palace is also famous for something else. Hauntings. Over the centuries, guests and visitors have numerous sightings and unusual sounds. Most often, workers in 18th century clothing are seen milling about, and some people claim to have seen the ghost Marie Antoinette herself. One of the strangest reports is of seeing phantom woodlands and houses that have not been there for more than 200 years. Okay, a fitful night in Barcelona. After weeks of traveling, I found myself in a small dark room just off the main La Rambla in Barcelona, Spain. My girlfriend and I were very weary and grateful for the simple and affordable room. While my girlfriend slipped easily into a deep slumber, I tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. I became keenly aware of a glowing sensation. And around the shuttered window, irritated, I tried to ignore it. Exhausted as I was, but I was unable to ignore it, and so I looked back toward the window. I clearly saw a man sitting with his back to me at a desk in front of the window. There was no actual desk in the room. He appeared to be leaning forward and writing something down on paper. He took no notice of me whatsoever, and I felt no threat. I simply turned over, and at last, boom, I was asleep. All right, the Holy Grail. The infamous object has been sought by scholars, scientists, and the devout for centuries. The Holy Grail is best known as the cup that Jesus used to drink from at the Last Supper, or that he used, and that Jesus' uncle used to catch drops of Jesus' blood at, like we did crucifixion all the time. That's kind of weird. His uncle? I never heard that. Used to catch drops of Jesus' blood at the crucifixion. In order to escape persecution, the disciples of Jesus took the Grail to Glastonbury, England. There are countless legends surrounded the Grail and its mystical powers. Some believe it is a cauldron of magic containing secrets of birth and death. Others argue that the Grail is not an object, but rather a state of spiritual enlightenment. Many chalices resting in museums around the world claim to be the actual Grail. Sacs say human. Locals help tourists remember the name of an ancient Inca ruins by laughingly telling them it is pronounced sexy woman. I didn't even get that out of that word. Did you? On a hillside just above the town of Cusco, Peru, the Sacsayhuaman ruins still bake in the golden light of the Inca's beloved sun. Most local history says that Cusco was built in the shape of the sacred puma, and Sacsayhuaman, that is what it said, Huama, was the puma's head. The stone walls and monolith of Sacsayhuaman were so expertly crafted that the Spanish conquistadors convinced no mortal men could create stonework so perfect. So we've always been having these issues. Oh man. Thought the Sacsayhuaman must have been built by evil spirits. Okay, whatever. The Daughter's Love. November of 1919 was an especially cold and difficult winter in the northern regions of Italy. Snow fell on Venice, and Dr. Antonio Salvecchi was making his way down one of the canals in a covered gondola. The doctor was the bishop's physician and was leaving the church late after attending to an elderly member. Oops. Thank you. Let's try it like that. All right. Member of the diocese. From the banks of the canals, Doctor heard the voice of a young girl crying for help. When the doctor looked through the falling snow to the street, he saw a little girl clutching a shawl for warmth, calling to him. Her mother was ill, and the little girl was begging that he come to her. Although he was surprised that the girl recognized him as a doctor, he nonetheless answered her plea and disembarked from the gondola, following the little girl to a court, then up a flight of stairs in one of the old houses. There he found a sick woman who had a terrible case of pneumonia. As Salvati attempted to ease the woman's pain, he said to her that she was lucky to have such a daughter, one who would brave the elements to come and find him to get her help. At this, the woman looked quite shocked and reported to the doctor that her daughter had died 1 month before. Salvati argued with her, telling the sick woman he had just seen her and followed her here. How else would he have known to go to her, just as she was at her sickest? But the woman insisted her daughter had died and pointed to a cupboard where she kept her daughter's things. The doctor indulged the woman and opened the cabinet, only to discover the woman indeed had her young daughter's things. Among them the very shawl, dry as a bone, that he had seen her clutching as she called to him in the snowy night. No trace of the little girl was found. That's interesting. Memphis Belle. The jewel of downtown Memphis, Tennessee, is the Orpheum Theater. We have those everywhere. but nonetheless, a beautiful and ornate theater that hosts classic and modern acts ranging from musicals to Shakespeare to Tom Waits. The Orpheum has also been host to several supernatural events. Most common is the sighting of the ghost of a little girl. Many employees, docents, and historians agree that she is likely the spirit of a little girl who was killed around the turn of the 20th century by a horse and carriage while crossing the street on her way to the theater. Other accounts say that a girl died when she fell from the upper balcony. While her cause of death is uncertain, there have been multiple sightings of the same little girl, who is known simply as Mary. She is spotted occasionally in the box seats and frequently in the theater before or after a concert or play. I mean, I guess if I was stuck there, I would probably be doing something kind of similar. The Silver Queen Hotel in Virginia City, Nevada. Interesting twist of events. There's a hotel that has stood the test of time. First built in 1876, the Silver Queen Hotel still does not have phones, really, televisions, or alarm clocks in any of its 29 rooms. Popular among history buffs and those who come to Virginia City, but in Nevada, to host countless wedding parties, anniversaries, and romance seekers. It also plays a host to a few ghost hunters, for it's known for a high level of paranormal activity. While some people come specifically seeking ghosts, others unsuspecting guests have been shocked to witness haunting activities. One couple heard the sound of a banjo being tuned in the room next to her, only to find the room empty when they went to investigate. The couple also heard an argument going on outside their door. When they flung open the door, they saw no one, but they still heard two voices arguing. The couple became convinced the hotel was haunted. They were later awakened by a loud pounding at their door, but then when they answered, they found only the empty hall. Other guests have reported hearing creaks, footsteps, and doors opening and closing. To market. Pike Place Market in Seattle, Washington is a well-known attraction in the city's bustling downtown. Apart from a rich history and stalls overflowing with wares, the market is also home to several legendary ghosts. An elderly Native American woman, a little boy, a large woman, and a tall African American man. Shopkeepers and tourists alike have reported strange goings-on throughout the years, including sightings of these spirits, footsteps, and empty aisles and items out of place. Origins of the Ouija. Oh my. The Ouija is any surface printed with letters, numbers, and other symbols and used as a tool to communicate with the dead. The Ouija board, which was patented by the Parker brothers, imagine that, in 1920, is what most commonly comes to mind when thinking of the Ouija. The word Ouija is believed to stem from OUI, which means yes, in French, and ja, meaning yes, in Scandinavian languages and in German. Other stories say the name of the tool was revealed to inventor Charles Kinnard during a seance, and that Ouija is actually an ancient Egyptian word meaning good luck. I say it's kind of scary that they're in the child play toy aisle. A wedding night visitor. It was the night before my fiance and I were to be wed. We had chosen a beautiful B&B, the Willard Street Inn in Burlington, Vermont, for lodging and holding the intimate ceremony. Upon arrival, we were given the run of the place until we could choose any room we wanted. My wife-to-be and I chose the tower room, primarily for its view of Lake Champlain. Why does this sound familiar? I slept fitfully, tossing and turning until I fell into an exhausted slumber. Hadn't been asleep long when I awoke quite suddenly and sat up. In front of me was a man in his 50s wearing a tuxedo. He appeared to be trying to make a bed that would have been perpendicular to the bed we were in. He took no notice of me, but continued with what seemed to be his normal rounds. I did not feel any threat and, quite tired, I rolled over and went back to sleep. Interesting. Okay. This chapter is called The Actual Chicken Show, Enchanted Animals, Psychic Pets, Botanical Oddities, and Other Strange Truths About Mother Nature. Let's do it. All right. So I'm just kind of curious. The annual chicken show. Okay, the annual chicken show. What do you know? Held the second Saturday in July in Wayne, Nebraska, the annual chicken show features a crowing contest for roosters, a free omelet feed for humans, and a chicken flying meat, fully sanctioned by the International Chicken Flying Association. For real. Included events are a most beautiful beak contest, chicken bingo, and an egg drop. Participants risk getting egg on their face by trying to catch a raw egg drop from a full extended cherry picker. All right. The National Cluck Off selects the person with the most lifelike cluck and most believable crow. Another contest offers prizes to the man and woman who sport the most chicken-like legs. According to National Wildlife Magazine, dolphins experience unihemispheric sleep. One half of the brain rests while the other half stays vigilantly awake. Dolphins sleep with one eye closed, the eye opposite of the dozing half of the brain. I like that they threw that in there, but all right, so Mike the Headless Wonder Chicken. My mom said catching chickens was tough. In 1945, former Lloyd Olson of Fruita, Colorado, went to his barnyard to butcher a chicken for his family's dinner, but the chicken in question had other news. Olson skillfully beheaded the fowl with a swift axe chop, and the body, like those of so many freshly killed chickens, began to stagger around. Then it took off running. The next day, Olson found the headless rooster, still alive and pecking. In that wild, unable to kill a bird with such a clear will to live, the farmer began using an eyedropper to feed grain and water down its esophagus. He then drove the bird 250 miles to the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. There, scientists determined that Olson's axe blow had missed the rooster's jugular vein, and a subsequent blood clot had kept the bird from bleeding to death. The brainstem, which controlled most of the bird's reflexes, functions, remained attached to the body. Oblivious to the fact that most of his head was missing, the rooster continued trying to peck for food, preening its feathers and sleeping with the top of his neck under his wing. Over the next 18 months, Olson continued to use an eyedropper to feed the bird, who flourished in spite of his handicap, growing from 2.5 pounds to a robust 18 pounds. Dubbed Mike the Headless Wonder Chicken, the plucky rooster, and Olson set off on a national tour and became the subject of articles in Time and Life magazine. Unfortunately, Mike's miraculous life came to an abrupt end in an Arizona hotel. The rooster choked, and Olson was unable to find an eyedropper to clear his feathered friend's throat. Oh man, today Mike still has his own fan club, and his dauntless spirit is celebrated annually in Fruita on the third weekend in May. Mike's festival includes a chicken recipe contest, a chicken dance contest, and a 5K run like a headless chicken. Appropriately, the event's website states, attending this fun family event is a no-brainer. Animal criminals. Centuries ago, animals were often put on trial for crimes ranging from witchcraft to theft to murder. I didn't know that exactly, but okay. Throughout history, the animal that's been prosecuted most in court is the pig. In 1547, France, for example, a mother pig and her 6 babies were sentenced to death for killing and eating a child. The sow was executed rather, but the piglets were pardoned because it was felt they were led astray by the bad example of their mother. The only known criminal hanging, the only known criminal hanging of an elephant, took place in Irwin, Tennessee on September 11th, 1916. The convict's name was 5-Ton Mary, and she had killed a keeper. In 1963, the courts of the Tripoli sentenced 75 convicted banknote smugglers to death as my one time. They will clean the thing up? I don't know. Earliest doctors. Chimpanzees exhibit an apparent knowledge and use of medicinal plants. They have been recorded using 13 different plant genera from 8 families, as medication for a variety of ailments. Indigenous populations of the same region use many of the same plants to treat a variety of stomach upsets, headaches, plants to treat headaches and parasitic infections. Chimpanzees seem to have an extensive knowledge of which part of the plant to use. They have been seen consuming the leaves, the pitch, and the roots during times of illness. Not cute. According to the book Weird U.S., more than one person reported spotting a humongous penguin waddling down Clearwater Beach, 1998. The bird was reportedly a striking 15 feet tall, and left giant web tracks in the sand. Around the same time, boaters in the Gulf told reporters about a huge penguin-like bird they'd seen floating in the water, and a pilot claimed to have a creature of a similar description on the banks of the Swanee River. So in 1998, there was, some massive penguin sighting. The Phoenix Hope can wing her way through the desert skies and still defying fortune's spite, revive from the ashes and rise. Okay. The 14-toed tapir. Barrett's tapir is the largest land mammal in Central America, with a range from southern Mexico to northwestern Colombia. Tapirs are elusive and agile animals who move expertly through vast and varied terrain, from steep slopes to rivers. Uniquely, they have 4 front toes, but only 3 back ones, for a total of 14 toes. Everyone knows about the legend of the Loch Ness Monster, the huge snake-like creature that supposedly terrorizes a lake in Scotland. Fewer have heard about Caddy of Puget Sound, Washington. Caddy sports a long neck and a shrunken horse-like head, and is estimated to be at least 40 feet long. Lake Memphremagog on the international border between Vermont and Quebec boasts its own sea monster, nicknamed Memphrey. Sightings of the huge serpent-like creature date back to the early 19th century and have continued into the 21st century. 14 frogs, though typically a biblical phenomenon, raining animals, have been reported around the world. The 2 most common of these animals are fish and frogs. However, there have even been reported around the world. The 2 most common of these animals are fish and frogs. However, there have even been accounts of falling jellyfish, worms, and ducks. Charles Fort, a 19th century writer and researcher of strange phenomena, included true stories about falling frogs in his book, The Book of the Damned. Curious cats. King Charles I of England, 1600 to 1649, got the idea that if he lost his beloved black cat, it would mean a disaster for him. So he had the animal guarded constantly. Unfortunately, the cat got sick and died. Strangely enough, Charles was right. The day after the cat died, he was arrested for treason and not long afterward beheaded. Feline fears. U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft suffers from allophobia, a deadly fear of cats. He is afraid of calicos in particular. Feline, okay, cats love heart. When English writer Thomas Hardy, 1840 to 1928, died, his heart was kept apart when his body was cremated. The idea was to bury it in Stinsford, England, the home of his beloved childhood church and his family's burial plot. All went according to plan until his sister's cat leaped up onto the kitchen table, smashed the heart, and ran. Yeah, okay. That's a lot of kitty litter. The record of ownership for the most cats goes to Jack and Donna Wright of Kingston, Ontario. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, the couple owns a staggering 689 feline. Jeez. That's crazy. One cat can knock up 8 other cats in one night, and I didn't know it, but they're what have yous. They're like, they're painful. They're like ribbed with stuff that hurts the cats. That's why they scream so loud. Anyway, the couple owns a staggering 689 felines. Many descended from the cat that started it all, a tabby called Midnight, whom Donna picked up in 1970. Lifesaver. A couple named Irma and Gianni lived in a village near Mount Vesuvius in the 1940s. One evening in 1944, their cat became agitated and tried to get the couple out of bed by jumping on them, scratching, and eventually chasing Gianni around the room. Gianni was enraged and wanted to throw the cat outside. Irma, however, felt that the cat was trying to tell them to leave. She insisted that they pack some clothes and get the heck out. Soon after, Vesuvius erupted, covering their village in lava and killing many people. Irma and Gianni's cat had saved them from that fate. Cruel and unusual punishment. As recently as the late 19th century, women accused of adultery in Turkey were tied in bags with live cats and thrown into the ocean. That's crazy. Hold that thought. Is food psychic? Many people, you can hold on to it if you want to. Many people claim their pets have extrasensory perception, or ESP, and a Russian experiment proved it. To test dogs' mind-reading abilities, the scientists conducted 1,278 trials that measured the canine's response to unspoken commands. The dogs responded correctly to the unspoken commands more than 50% of the time. The odds of this phenomenon being mere chance, claims Dennis Barton, the author of Psychic Animals, are billions to 1. The annual Fire Ant Festival. Really? A weird celebration. This one up here, though, real quick. I guess they have proven that dogs have extrasensory perception because the dogs responded correctly to the unspoken command more than 50% of the time. The odds of this phenomenon being mere chance, no. All right, in South Texas, the fire ant, red ants that swarm and bite, is a real problem. But in Marshall, Texas, The people decided that since they couldn't get rid of these pests, they might as well have some fun with them. So they started the annual Fire Ant Festival. Special events include the Fire Ant Call, Fire Ant Roundup, and a Fire Ant Chili Cook-Off, in which entrants must certify in writing that their ingredients include at least one fire ant. The ending to the festivities is the Fire Ant Stomp, which is not an attempt to squash the ants, but an old-fashioned street dance. Okay. Therefore I will wail and howl, and I will go stripped and naked. I will make a wailing like the dragons and mournful as the owls. Enthralling arachnids, magical spider webs. Only about half of all spider species spin webs to catch their prey. Spider webs. Okay. All spider webs are made of silk. Although it's only about 0.00012 inch in diameter, a spider's silk is stronger than steel of equal diameter. That's crazy. That's how they came up with the bulletproof vests. Okay, a spider's silk is stronger than steel of equal diameter. It is more elastic than nylon, more difficult to break than rubber, and is bacteria and fungi resistant. These qualities explain why at one time webs were used to pack wounds to help them stop bleeding. I guess so. Spiders have 1 to 6 kinds of spinning glands, each producing a different type of silk. For instance, the cylindrical gland produces silk used for egg sacs. Males often lack this particular gland. And the acneiform gland produces silk used for wrapping prey. Some spiders have glands that produce very fine silk. They comb and tease the fine strands until they are like Velcro. Tiny loops and hooks that entrap insect feet. Interesting. Silk is extruded through special pores called spinnerets, which consist of different sized spigots. Silk starts out as a liquid. As the liquid silk contacts the air, it hardens. The spider may need different silks for different purposes. By changing how fast the liquid is extruded or by using a different silk gland, it can control the strength and the quality of the silk. Why doesn't a spider get stuck in its own web? The spider weaves in non-sticky silk strands and only walks on those. Also, spiders have special oil on their legs that keep them from sticking to the silk. I did not know any of that. The well-bred spider. The spider can be... Whoa. The spider can often be identified by the type of web it weaves. The ability to weave is inherited, so specific types of spiders build specific types of webs. In addition, individual spiders sometimes develop a personal style, sort of like a signature. The spider is a hunter, and its web is a snare designed to hold its prey. I thought this spider didn't do a web at all. So the design of its web and the place where the spider builds it depends on the kind of insects it's trying to catch. There are more insects, especially crawling ones, closer to the ground. Spiders often spin webs across ground litter, such as leaves and fallen branches, where an unsuspecting insect may crawl. Strong flying insects are usually higher, so webs built high are stronger than those in low spots. Web spinners. There are 5 different types of web spinning spiders. One kind is a cobweb spider, such as black widows. Oh, okay. They use their webs as trip lines to snare prey. From their webs, several vertical lines are drawn down and secured tautly to a surface with globs of glue. Insects get stuck to the glue and break the line. The tension of the elastic trip lines, once released, flings the victim up to the spider waiting in its web. Cobweb weavers usually build only one web, and so with time the web becomes tattered and littered with bits of debris. The second kind of web spinner is called a sheet builder. They construct a horizontal mat beneath the horizontal trip line, much like a trampoline, under an invisible wire. Flying or jumping insects that are stopped mid-air by the line are flung to the net below. These spiders are smart. That are stopped mid-air by the line are flung to the net below, and as the prey struggles to regain its balance, the agile spider pounces and inflicts a deadly bite. Web-casting spiders, such as ogre-faced spiders, are the third kind of web spinner. I don't know if I'm familiar with an ogre-faced spider. They use web snares much differently than the others. Instead of attaching the web to a bush or a wall, the spider carries it. What? The spider uses the web much like a fishing net. I did not know this at all. And cast it on passing prey. The spider hunts every night and afterward will either tuck the web away until the next day's hunter spin a new one. Then there are the angle lines, such as the bola spider. It first suspends itself from a trapeze line and hangs there upside down. Then it sends down a single light line baited with a glob of glue. When an insect moves by, the bola takes careful aim and casts the line toward the insect. If successful, it will reel in its prize easily. Lastly, there are orb weavers. These weavers spin the largest and strongest webs. Some webs span more than 1 meter. Natives of New Guinea and the Solomon Islands use the webs of the orb-weaving spiders as fishing nets. These webs were reportedly strong enough to hold a fish weighing as much as a pound. These webs are especially tailored to capture flying insects, which is why they're vertically suspended. Many orb weavers meticulously take down their webs each day and build a new one at night. Orb weavers spin such intricate webs that they are often the focus of behavioral studies. For example, 2 orb weavers went along on Skylab 2 on July 28th of 1973. Researchers were interested to know the effects of zero gravity. Oh boy, remind you guys, it's still just a theory. Effects of zero gravity on the spider's weaving ability. After some adjustments, the spiders were able to weave fairly normal webs. One curious difference was that the space webs were symmetrical, which, while Earth webs tend to be asymmetrical. That is wild. Reclusive still. Only 800 deaths from brown recluse spiders have been verified in medical literature since 1965. But don't let one get you. But more than 800 death certificates list a cause of death as hemolytic anemia, an allergic reaction to the bite of the brown recluse. True sloth. In 2007, after 3 years of failed attempts to entice a sloth into budging as part of an experiment in animal movement, scientists in the eastern German city of Jena gave up. The sloth, named Mats, was remanded to a zoo after consistently refusing to climb up and then back down a pole as part of an experiment conducted by scientists at the University of Jena's Institute of Systematic Zoology and Evolutionary Biology. So he was a bit of a rebel. Neither pounds of cucumbers nor plates of homemade spaghetti were appetizing enough to make Matt's move. Matt's new home is the zoo in the northwestern city of Duisburg, where, according to all reports, he is very comfortable. A rat can last longer without water than a camel. Rats can also hold their breath for 3 minutes and tread water for 3 days? I did not know that. Rats multiply so quickly that in 18 months, 2 rats could have over 1 million descendants. The rat tails. Deserved or not, the rat tails have always received bad press. One reason the Egyptians had a cat goddess was because her feline children ate the rodents that ate the Egyptian grain. Remember Dick Whittington and his cat? And because the cat saved London from an invasion of rats carrying the Black Death in the Middle Ages, there is only one known rat goddess. The male Kulians, who live on the island of Vanuatu in the South Pacific, have a goddess named Li Hev, whose name translates as "she who smiles so we can draw near and she can eat us." They offered her boars so she wouldn't eat human corpses. The best rat story concerns the Pied Piper, the magical fellow who lived oops, the magical fellow who lived in early 13th century Germany and had a magic flute whose tune attracted rats. He traveled about the countryside offering to drive the rats out of town and into a cave under a mountain for a fee. When he visited Hamelin, the good burglars hired him and he wished the rats away. But the burghers neglected to pay him, so the Pied Piper charged his tune and led the town's children under the mountain with a whistle. When rats take over. During the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church decided that cats were agents of the devil and ordered the extermination of all felines off of their heads. For 200 years, there were cat burnings and other forms of cat murder. If you tried to protect your puss, you would be burned at the stake as a witch. Consequently, the population of cats in Europe was decimated, which had an effect the church hadn't considered. The rat population, too, now unchecked, exploded, and so did the Black Plague, which was spread by fleas on rats. By the time the church saw what stupidness they were doing, the error of its way, and reversed its order, decreeing that good Christians must treat cats kindly. 75% of the population of Europe had died in the plague. Cat's revenge, perhaps? A whale of a time. Female blue whales give birth to calves every 2 to 3 years. Pregnancy lasts for about 1 year. A newborn calf is about 23 feet or 7 meters long and weighs 5,000 to 6,000 pounds. A nursing mother produces over 50 gallons, that's 200 liters of milk a day. The milk contains 35 to 50% fat and allows the calf to gain weight at a rate of up to 10 pounds an hour, or over 250 pounds. That's 44 kilograms a day. At 6 months, the calf is weaned, and at that point, its average length is about 52 feet. The blue whale reaches sexual maturity in 10 years. Woman's best friend. A woman in California who ran a successful coffee business had her canine companion constantly at her side. One afternoon, while taking a much-needed break, her dear doggie began to sniff and lick at her breast area. That night, her dog repeated the odd behavior by tugging at the blankets and biting her pajama shirt. The next day, the canine jumped into her lap and dove at her breast, which caused some pain. She was stunned to discover that she had a lump in her breast, and later medical tests revealed it to be a cancerous tumor. She had a routine breast exam just 3 months earlier, but the odd behavior of her dog saved her life. If the tumor had developed more extensively, it could have spread into her lymph nodes. After months of chemo and radiation, she is now living cancer-free. Oak trees do not produce acorns until they are at least 50 years old. That's key. I did not know that, did y'all? Where's that at? Oak trees. So my tree's gotta be 50 years old. That's what that says to me. Oak trees do not produce acorns until they are at least 50 years old. Good to know. Fibonacci flower. Plants with spiral patterns related to the golden angle. An angle related to the golden ratio or divine proportion consistently displays another fascinating mathematical property. The seeds of the flower head form interlocking spirals going both clockwise and counterclockwise. These numbers of seeds are almost always two consecutive Fibonacci numbers. Fibonacci numbers form a sequence in which each number is the sum of the previous 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on. Daphnomancy is the word for divination through bay leaves. The word pays homage to Daphne, a nymph from ancient Greek myths who was turned into the first bay laurel tree when fleeing Apollo's flirtatious advances. The eggplant is a member of the thistle family. Throughout the 1500s to the 1700s, tobacco was prescribed as medicine for a variety of complaints, including headaches, toothaches, arthritis, and bad breath. Heroic herbal, yarrow, Alchilia millifolimia, takes its Latin name from Achilles, the invisible Greek warrior who had but one vulnerable spot, his heel. When his heel was sliced, yarrow was used to assuage the bleeding. Even today, one of the most well-known medicinal uses for yarrow is to staunch bleeding. The shape of the yarrow's leaves also form tiny arrows which look like Achilles' bow and arrow. Yarrow was also used as the original sticks in the Chinese oracle, the I Ching. Morbid plants. Vampire lily, Draculus vulgaris. No freakish garden is complete without the beloved vampire lily. Also called the dragon arum, it belongs to the Archaea family, sporting an incredible deep red flower with a ruffled edge and a long black or deep purple spadix. The vampire lily brings to mind the gown you wished you had for this last Halloween's costume. Even the stems are gothic looking. They are molted green and red, as if they had been splattered with blood. One of the creepiest aspects of this plant, and no doubt who brought on the fantastically vampiric associations, is the fact that it emits a smell like that of rotting flesh. Oh, lovely. This scent attracts the flies and carbon beetles that pollinate it. The flower's deceptive beauty lures human garden visitors into its realm, enticing them to put their noses into the blood-red curls of the blossom and inhale deeply, only to be horrified and repelled by the flower's sweet and sickening smell of death. Voodoo lily. Which could be more bewitching than a plant with such a ghoulish name? The voodoo lily, sometimes identified as S. venemus, derives its name from its speckled bloody red flower foul, corpse-like smell, adapted to attract flies and beetles as its pollinators. The voodoo lily's flowers formed with a tall central spike or spadix, surrounded by the spathe. I need to know what the parts those are. For the voodoo lily, the spadix is the richest of reds, and the spathe is a vibrant red spotted with deep burgundy, especially enchanting even when not in bloom. The voodoo lily has speckled leaf spikes that appears after the single flower has come and gone, shooting up and branching out to look like miniature Gothic tropical trees, green and smattered with blood-red spots at the base. The voodoo lily is bizarre, enchanting, and gorgeously ghastly. Of all pumpkins sold in the United States, 99% end up as jack-o'-lanterns. I believe this. The corpse flower. No list of botanical oddities would be complete without the one and only corpse flower, named for its extremely potent corpse-like smell. Look at that spelling. Amorphophallus titanium is also one of the largest flower structures in the world, growing up to 12 feet tall and 5 feet wide in the wild, with leaves that can exceed 20 feet. The corpse flower, also known as the Titan arum, is both ghastly and breathtaking. You will want to hold your breath when you're in its fullest bloom. The flower comes before the leaves, although the plant needs to be at least 6 years old before it can bloom. When it does, a large mottled spike pushes up from the ground. slowly unfurling to reveal a beautiful, deep red velvet outer spathie and a third floor, 3-foot dirty green spike in the center. When fully open, the bloom of the corpse flower begins to live up to its rotten reputation, for it emits the strongest and most foul of decompressing flesh-like odors. The smell of it is caused by the most wicked of essential oils, putrescines, and cadaverines. A foul beauty, the corpse flower looks like something from the musical Little Shop of Horrors. I love that movie. And anyone who has seen and smelled it will not quickly forget its cadaverous horrors. Other freaky, stinky plants. There are, besides the vampire lily, the voodoo lily, and the corpse flower, many other unusual plants. In the Archaea family, for blood red and blackish flowers, check out Arium something. Okay, I will. Is that? So, for blood red and blackish flowers, check out Arum apellium. Some other crazy words. Another plant that smells of rotting flesh is the aptly named dead horse, Helio de Sorceress. Chapter 3, Histories and Mysteries. Bizarre but true facts about historical figures and oddities from today and yesterday. This one should be good. Let's go. The professor must not prevent us from realizing that history is fun and that the most bizarre things really do happen. That's true. Famous names, unfortunate deaths. Benjamin Franklin's death. Benjamin Franklin died, strangely enough, from complications from sitting in front of an open window. Franklin was a big believer in fresh air, even in the middle of winter. He slept with the windows open year-round, and as he wrote, I rise almost every morning and sit in my chamber without any clothes whatever, half an hour or an hour, according to the season. In April 19... No, not 19 anything. In April 1790, the 84-year-old Franklin developed an abscess in his lungs, which his doctor blamed on too many hours spent sitting at the open window. The abscess burst on April 17th, sending him into a coma. He died a few hours later. The death of Joseph Stalin. Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin, who murdered millions of his own country's people, may have been the last victim of his own reign of terror. On the evening of March 1st, 1953, the 74-year-old Stalin stayed up drinking with his cronies until 4 a.m. His normal habit was to rise again around noon, but that day he didn't. As the hours passed and Stalin did not emerge from his private quarters, his aides began to panic. They didn't want to risk his wrath, but they were worried. At 10:30, they finally worked up the nerve to enter his apartment, where they found him sprawled out on his living room floor, paralyzed by a stroke and unable to speak. The terrified aides still did not know what to do, so they didn't call for the Kremlin doctors until 8:30 the following day morning. By then, it was way too late. According to Stalin's daughter, Svetlana, the dictator died a difficult and terrible death for days. King George V of England, grandfather of Queen Elizabeth II, was euthanized with morphine and cocaine to meet a newspaper deadline. The king, a heavy smoker, was in the final stages of lung disease on January 20th, 1936. His death was imminent. The date of the state funeral had been set, and the London Tones had been instructed to hold the presses. A death announcement would be coming soon, but that night, as the newspaper's deadline loomed, the king still held on. The king's doctor, who saw that the king's condition might last for many more hours and disrupt the arrangements, decided to euthanize him so that the morning papers could still make an announcement that the king was dead. That's messed up. Diamond Jim Brady, turn on the 20th century millionaire, collector of fine gems, hence the nickname, and one of the world's all-time great eaters, Diamond Jim Brady, in fact, ate himself to death. Did not know this. A typical day for Brady started with a breakfast of steak, eggs, cornbread, muffins, pancakes, pork chops. Dang, dude. Fried potatoes, and that's why you're not as hungry. Washed down with a gallon of or more of orange juice. Breakfast was followed with snacks at 11:30. All right. Does it really say 11:30? I don't know. But all right, we did pretty good. We got to page 68, 69. All right, I'll read this. Typical day for Brady. He ate all that food, 11:30, 12:30. An afternoon tea, all of which involved enormous quantities of food. Dinner often consisted of 3 dozen oysters, 6 crabs, 2 bowls of soup, 7 lobsters, 2 ducks, 2 servings of turtle meat, plus steak, vegetables, a full platter of pastries, and a 2-pound box of chocolates. Good Lord. When Brady suffered an attack of gallstones in 1912, a surgeon opened him up and found that his stomach was 6 times the normal size of a human stomach and covered in so many layers of fat they couldn't complete the surgery. Diamond Jim ignored their advice to cut back, yet hung on another 5 years, albeit in considerable pain from diabetes, bad kidneys, stomach ulcers, and heart problems. He died of a heart attack in 1917. That was a lot of food. Catherine the Great. There are probably more rumors about the death of Catherine the Great, the Empress of Russia, than that of any other monarch in history. Most of them relate to her reputedly unusual sexual appetites. For some reason, many people believe a horse was being lowered onto her when the cable holding the horse aloft snapped, crushing her. That is a complete myth, perhaps invented by the French, Russians, enemies at the time. What really happened? 2 weeks after suffering a mild stroke at the age of 67, Catherine appeared to be recovering. On November 5th, she began her day with her usual routine, rising at 8, drinking several cups of coffee, and going to spend 10 minutes in the bathroom. But she did not come out after 10 minutes, and when her footman finally looked in on her, he found her sprawled out on the floor, bleeding and barely alive like Elvis Presley. She had a stroke while sitting on the toilet. She died the next day. George Eastman, the founder of Eastman Kodak and the father of modern photography, committed suicide in 1932. Eastman was 78 years old and felt tired and ill. On March 14th, he updated his will, and later in the day, he asked his doctor and his nurse to leave the room, telling them he wanted to write a note. It turned out to be a suicide note. He wrote the note, put out his cigarette, removed his glasses, and shot himself in the head. Wow. Isadora Duncan, one of the world's most famous dancers, died from a broken neck on September 14, 1927. Duncan climbed into the passenger seat of a blue gaudy race car wearing a long red silk scarf. The scarf was a little too long. When the car started off, the tail end wrapped around the wheel and yanked Duncan out of the car, oh man, snapping her neck and dragging her for several yards before the driver realized what had happened. In an eerie twist, the day before she died, Duncan had told an Associated Press reporter, "I'm frightened that some quirk accident may happen." Margaret Mitchell, the author of Gone with the Wind, was run down by an automobile when she was crossing busy Peachtree Street in downtown Atlanta with her husband. She was halfway across when she saw a speeding motorist bearing down on her. Mitchell had previously said she was certain she would die in a car crash. Perhaps that's why she panicked, dating back to things that I can't exactly remember. Let's just say dating back across the river and leaving her husband standing in the middle of the road. She got hit. He did not. She died in the hospital 5 days later. The driver who hit her turned out to be a 29-year-old taxi driver with 23 traffic violations on his record. Rockefeller. When Nelson Rockefeller, the former governor of New York, the vice president under Gerald Ford, the grandson of John D. Rockefeller and founder of Standard Oil, died in 1979 at age 71 Official reports said that he had a heart attack while sitting at his desk. Later, the story was found to be a cover-up. He was actually alone in his townhouse with 25-year-old Megan Marshak, who was on the Rockefeller's staff. She supposedly had been working with him on a book about his modern art collection, but as the New York Daily Times reported, there was no work papers at his house, just food and wine. So how did he really die? What really happened? Two people know, and one of them died off with her head. The execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, was not the somber operation it should have been. The executioner was not used to executing women, and he was nervous. The first blow missed Mary's neck entirely, hitting the back of her head instead. The second and third attempts hit their target but didn't cut the Queen's neck completely. When the execution was finally complete, the executioner tried to hold up the severed head to show the audiences this was custom, but he failed to notice that the Queen had been wearing a wig and head slipped from his hand and bounced 3 times on the ground. A fatal nosebleed. Attila the Hun did not die in battle, as many believe. He met his maker on his wedding night. After a night of lovemaking, he got a nasty nosebleed and lost so much blood that he died. I don't know why that sounds familiar. Napoleon Bonaparte used an oracular system based on a series of random dots. The system is a version of what is commonly known as geomancy, but which has come to be referred to as the Oracle de Napoleon. While not a great deal is known about the actual details of the system, Napoleon kept them a closely guarded secret. Several attempts have been made to reconstruct it. None are proven to be the exact system he used, although there are versions that have been confirmed by a woman who claims to have traveled throughout France with Napoleon's company and witnessed his use of the system on several occasions. She revealed the system after his death. What goes around comes around. Fleming was a poor Scottish farmer. One day, while trying to make a living for his family, he heard a cry for help coming from a nearby bog. He dropped his tools and ran to the bog. There, mirrored to his waist in black mud, was a terrified boy screaming and struggling to free himself. Farmer Fleming saved the lad from what could have been a terrifying death. The next day, a fancy carriage pulled up to the Scotsman's sparse surroundings. An elegantly dressed nobleman stepped out and introduced himself as the father of the boy Farmer Fleming had saved. The nobleman offered to repay Farmer Fleming for saving his son's life, and the farmer would not accept payment. At that moment, Farmer Fleming's own son came to the door of the family home. The nobleman and the Oops. Okay, hang on. The nobleman and the farmer struck up a deal that he would provide Farmer Fleming's son with the same level of education that his son would enjoy. His son attended the very best schools and in time graduated from St. Mary's Hospital Medical School in London. He went on to become known throughout the world as the noted Sir Alexander Fleming, the discoverer of penicillin. Interesting. Years afterward, the same throughout the world as the noted Sir Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin. Years afterward, the same nobleman's son who was saved from the bog was stricken with pneumonia. What saved his life this time? Penicillin. The name of the nobleman, Lord Randolph Churchill. His son's name, Sir Winston. The ugly pickup parading contest. In 1987, newspaper columnist Les Mann wrote in homage to his junker 1974 pickup, Black Beauty, chanting it was the ugliest truck on the planet. Irate, ugly truck owners wrote in, saying they could top him, and so the first ugly truck contest was born in Chadron, Nebraska. Experts pick up the ugly pickup of the year. The official rules are that trucks have to be street legal and over a decade old. They have to be able to move under their own power A majority of their surface area has to be rust and dense, and most importantly, they've got to have a good, ugly truck name. Contestants get extra points for something especially ugly about their truck. Mary King's Close. The macabre past of Mary King's Close, located in the Old Town section of Edinburgh, Scotland, and sealed off in the 1600s, is seeing the light of day again. In 2003, the close was reopened, becoming a new tourist attraction. A preserved slice of 17th century life. Much mystery surrounds Mary King's Close. For centuries, locals have told tales of the close being sealed off to prevent the spread of the plague. No evidence disputes this story, and then there are some who say that the quarantine was voluntary. But lifelong inhabitants of Edinburgh say that after the close was sealed off, those outside heard anguished cries of people dying of starvation and begging to be let out. And they say that after this close was reopened, finger marks were found clawed into the bricks. Mary King's Close is now open to the public and is the site of much paranormal and historical investigation. It is thought to be one of the most haunted places in Scotland. Scrying for llamas. Every Tibetan Dalai Lama is the reincarnation of his predecessor. After the 13th Dalai Lama died in 1933, the search for his replacement began. Lake Lamo Lotso at Chokorgaga, Tibet, is a lake long believed by Tibetans to reveal visions about future. So, the regent of the government-appointed search party traveled to Lake Lahoni Lhasa, hoping that meditation, one of the two, and prayer would help him find the next Dalai Lama. After several days, the regent saw a vision out in the lake waters, a great monastery with green and gold. Near the monastery, a small building with turquoise tiles. The young boy who was destined to be the 14th Dalai Lama lived in a house with turquoise tiles. No fear. The first human cannonball was a beautiful young girl named Zazel. She was only 14 when the London circus she worked for recruited her for the honor. Zazel was catapulted out of the cannon not with gunpowder, as is widely believed, but with elastic springs that made no sound. The circus used firecrackers to create sparks and crackling sounds that mimicked gunpowder. In modern America, everyone who attempts to write satirically about the events of the day finds it difficult to concoct a situation so bizarre that it may not actually come to pass, while the article is still on the presses. Armageddon Bras. In 1999, the Times of London reported that the firm Triumph International Japan had invented a bra that lets its wearer know of any incoming missiles. Called the Armageddon Bra, it was designed to take advantage of the doomsday prophecy craze sweeping Japan. It had a sensor on the strap and a control box. Unfortunately, it didn't work all that well under clothes. To be the most effective, it had to be worn on the outside. No word there, though. Okay, let's see. Chicago's Lincoln Park, created in 1864, was originally a burial ground. The 120-acre cemetery had most of its graves removed and was expanded to more than 1,000 acres for recreational use. The first city in the U.S. to fluoridate their waters was Grand Rapids, Michigan in 1945. That's a long time ago. The first state to use the gas chamber was Nevada in 1924. The Declaration of Independence was signed on July 4th, 1779, but only by Charles Thomas and John Hancock. The majority of the people signed in on August 2nd, and the final signature wasn't until 5 years later. Edison's paranormal experiments. Well, we're going to end with this one, I swear, because Edison was such a thief. Thomas Edison was a scientist and legendary inventor. I don't know about that. But he also held he was good at getting to the patent office first and inventing a said patent office. But he also held great interest in the paranormal. In 1948, the Philosophical Library published a book called The Diary and Sundry Observations of Thomas Alva Edison, which is a collection of Edison's personal essays, letters, and journal entries. Much of the content talks about his attempts to communicate with the beyond and his numerous experiments contacting the dead in the afterlife. See, they're not going to tell us much about that. The nun came back. The young Bernadette Soubarian saw the Virgin Mary at a cave near Lourdes, France. At the tender age of 14, when she told people what she'd seen, she was accused of lying. But within 2 weeks, water began to trickle from the same cave, and it became renowned as trickle from the same cave, and it became renowned as a place of healing. Bernadette was declared a visionary and saint. Ironically, Bernadette herself never benefited from the healing water, suffering a variety of ailments, including asthma and tuberculosis. The Sisters of Nevers, the local convent, cared for Bernadette until her death at the age of 35 in the year 1879. A few decades after someone believed to be a saint has died, it is customary to dig up his or her body to see if it has remained intact. Bernadette's body did, in fact, remain quite preserved. Her recovered body was washed and then reinterred. Several years later, in 1919, she was again dug up and again found in a very preserved state. That's wild. She was reburied, only to be dug up once more in 1925, 45 or 6 years after her death. Her body was remarkably well preserved, so much so that she was put on display at the Church of St. Gilgard in Nevers, where she sits to this very day. 17th century Queen Anne of England gave birth to 17 children. Of these, only one made it past infancy. What? And even then the child lived until only the age of 12. 7 wonders of the ancient world. Can you name them? Pyramids at Giza, statue of Zeus at Olympia, Hanging Gardens of Babylon, Colosseus of Rhodes, Lighthouse at Alexandria, Temple of Artemis, Ephesus, and Mausoleum at Halicarnassus. History could pass for a scarlet text, its jot entitled Graven Red in Human Blood. Okay, oops. All right. On May 4th, 1865, Abraham Lincoln's body was laid to rest in a temporary vault in Oak Ridge Cemetery in Springfield, Illinois, while a permanent mausoleum was under construction. The body was moved 3 more times, then placed in its permanent resting place within a newly constructed granite tomb on October 15th, 1874. But in 1876, a ring of counterfeiters made 2 attempts to snatch Lincoln's body and hold it for ransom until an accomplice was freed from prison. The second attempt was nearly successful. It was foiled just as the conspirators were prying open. Between 16. Okay. I guess I'll let you guys go. It was foiled just as the conspirators were prying open the sarcophagus. Between 1876 and 1901, Lincoln's body was moved 14 more times. sometimes for security reasons, other times to repair the granite tomb in its dilapidated crypt. In 1901, Abe was laid to rest a final time as Hill Ibn dilapidated crypt. In 1901, Abe was laid to rest a final time as his son Robert supervised. Lincoln's coffin was encased in steel bars and buried under tons of cement. The body hasn't been moved since, as far as anyone can tell. Which body is Francisco Pizarro's? Francisco Pizarro, the 16th century Spanish explorer and conquistador of the Incas, was stabbed to death by the countrymen in 1541. His body was buried behind the cathedral in Lima, Peru, on the night he died, and it remained there for 2.5 years. In 1544, his bones were exhumed, placed in a velvet-lined box, and deposited under the main altar of the cathedral. Over the next 350 years, I figured you had just put up a lot of Christmas stuff. But then maybe not, because the babies are going to grab everything. Alright. So, we'll leave it right here on page John Paul's Cheap Funeral. The real Jesse James. My family was with these people. The Wild West Bank and train robber Jesse James was shot by one of his gang members in 1882. In the year after his death, several men came forward claiming to be the real Jesse James, arguing that the person in Jesse James' grave was someone else. Finally, in 1995, the remains in James' grave were exhumed and their DNA was compared with that of James' living descendant. The body turned out to indeed be that of the real McCoy. All right, well, I hope any of you enjoyed what you did here. This is the Book of the Bizarre, Freaky Facts and Strange Stories. And we made it to page 87. And so here's what we covered. Something Wicked, the annual chicken show, History's Mysteries. Is that where we are? I don't know. Tender murderers and malevolent males. Coincidence or synchronicity? I want to read that one. Morbid writers and tortured artists. Dia Dale Muertos, Sympathy for the Devil, still on the books and in the ether. Passing Strange, The Vapors, Superstitions and Curses, The Dark Side of the Moon. So we got like that far, I think. Something Wicked. 82. So where did we get to? So we're right here in History's Mysteries. But this should be interesting. So have a great day. And yeah, the book is not the weird. I was looking for 2008. The book is The Book of the Bizarre by Varla Ventura. Have a grand day. I wanted some effects. No effects for you? Of course it's 153. What does this button do? What does this one do? No? Do I have anything cool to show anybody? On me? Here's a koi fish, but I guess I meant rocks or something like that. No, nobody there. Although, can we like pause it, because that would be cool.